YouTube. God, that is going to leave a mark. Hello YouTube and welcome to the show. To all you regular cult members that usually hang out here for the science fiction book review videos but decided to loiter for a movie review, you're more than welcome. You've made the right decision. Thank you for the support. I love you all. Unusually for me, I'm not going to talk about spoilers in this review. I'm not going to reveal anything that's not already shown in the trailer or talk about the last act, the final third of the film at all. Because even though it's readily available, it's just popped up on Netflix in the UK and probably around the world as well, I bet there is a ton of people out there who haven't seen it yet. So no real spoilers today. Sputnik, as you can probably tell from the title and the artwork, the poster, is a science fiction horror hybrid. Look, I know I said no spoilers, okay, but look, a cosmonaut, loads of blood everywhere, and a shadow of a monster alien type thing. I'm just checking that we all know what to expect here, okay? Other than that artwork, I knew absolutely nothing about the film before I pressed play. I didn't read any reviews, I didn't watch any videos, I didn't even know if it was supposed to be good. I just knew that it was called Sputnik and I gave it a go. With all due respect to the team behind the film, I'd never heard of the director. I'd done a little bit of research after I watched the film. It's a first-time director. I'd never heard of them before. I'd never heard of any of the actors or any of the films that they've appeared in. However, I did discover that one of the actors was in a film called Santa Claus, Battle of the Magi. I've ordered my DVD already and I'm going to watch the shit out of that next Christmas. I know you're all excited, but keep an eye out for the review coming in December. Anyway, Sputnik is a 2020 Russian film made by Russians, about Russians, and filmed entirely in Russia. I'm just a huge fan of foreign films. I watch just as many as I do American or English films, if not more. Just to have a science fiction horror is a rarity. It always has been, even for Hollywood. So to have one made with decent production values in Russia and to have it so quickly available on Netflix of all places is like finding rockin' horse shit. Who needs cinema anymore? We can just stay in and watch this stuff forever. What a time to be alive. The plot. The film opens in space, 1983, I think it is. Two cosmonauts are strapped into their little spaceship, their pod, in orbit around Earth, and they're preparing to, you know, burn through the atmosphere to come back down to Earth. Then they hear something moving around on the outside of the capsule and we catch a tiny glimpse of it through the window. What the fuck is that? The window cleaner? An alien? A squirrel? No, go back one. It was an alien. Remember, we're in space. It's actually the alien on the poster, no, not a squirrel. Something goes wrong with the re-entry and they crash land. One of the cosmonauts dies. One of them survives. He's okay. But he's going to have a problem with that alien that's now living inside of his stomach. Yeah, it crawled in through his mouth and made itself at home in his guts. What a fantastic opening. That's just the first 2 or 3 minutes of the film. It just sets up the rest of the story, which is so much more about the symbiotic relationship between this cosmonaut and the alien. I really love that simple framing device and what they do with the situation for the rest of the film, because it's essentially a first contact story that gets smothered by the methodical, sterile Russian military. The cosmonaut, his name is Konstantin by the way, is kept under heavy armed guard and observed because the scientists, the government, the military, know that every night this creature, this alien, comes out of the host body to feed in the middle of the night when he's asleep or when it puts him to sleep. He can't just sort of wake up halfway through, and it's a nasty little bugger. It will kill the shit out of you. So enter Tatiana. That's the main character of the film, the lady on all the artwork. She is sent in to figure out a way to separate the two permanently, and it makes the whole scope of the film a lot smaller, a lot more focused on personality. It becomes a bit of a double character study of Tatiana and Konstantin. The structure and the perspective of the film kind of shifts once Tatiana is on the scene. The information about the alien is passed to us, the audience, through Tatiana in a very subtle way, and it's perfectly balanced. At this point in the film, I can't quite remember if we're told how long has passed since the crash landing and Tatiana showing up, but it feels like, I don't know, a few months. But all the boring scientific military stuff has already happened off camera, so we're catching up with the story through Tatiana, through her perspective, and we pretty much follow her point of view for the rest of the film. Greetings from the future. These videos take a lot of time and effort and a little bit of money to make. Money which we don't have. You can watch all of our videos for free on YouTube, or if you would like to support the channel, you can use Buy Me a Coffee, which is an online tipping service. Get yourself a t-shirt or a mug or some socks at the merch store. But best of all, we have a Patreon. You'll gain access to our exclusive Discord, home of the world's greatest read-alongs, the podcast Radio Death Cult, and of course, you can tell your friends and family that you've joined a death cult. Links in the description and on our YouTube homepage. Thank you so much. So obviously you can see where the science fiction comes from. Aliens exist. There appears to be only one, and I think this is the first time this has happened. And that's it. That's enough for the film. The story never gets bogged down in any more details. I don't think they communicate with it. They don't dissect it. You never see them looking back into space and looking for another one. They don't investigate the spaceship crash site. Sputnik just wants to get on with the psychological horror drama. The thing is, horror takes many forms and flavours in cinema. Some of it is very surface level and gory, and you get a little bit of that here, and some of it is jumpy and scary, not so much in Sputnik. This hits the nerve of body horror. You know, that sick feeling that you get when you see something disgusting happen to someone else's body. David Cronenberg is obviously the best example of this stuff. It's all about pus and transformation of the body and open wounds and blistered orifices. In the case of Sputnik, it's a slimy creature coming out of your mouth. We get this wonderfully tactile scene of this alien coming out of Konstantin, and because it's the mouth, you can really taste it. You can feel that gag reflex. There's nothing worse than something alive coming out of your mouth, is there? What else could it have been? I suppose it could come out of your ear. That's not very nice. Or your nose. Your nose, that's a good one. Oh, your arsehole. Of course. Can't believe I forgot about the arsehole. Is the arsehole worse than the mouth? I just don't know. Let's talk about it in the comments. Let's have a vote, okay? If you had an alien living inside your stomach that would wake up in the middle of the night and come out for fresh air, is it more horrific if it comes out your mouth or your arsehole? I just can't decide. Anyway, cinematically, the film definitely has a Cold War palette. Now, I never went to Russia, a Russian military base in 1984, so I don't know for sure, but it feels authentic, and maybe because it's made by Russians in Russia, that's probably why it feels real. That doesn't mean that this isn't a beautiful film. It doesn't mean that it's an ugly film, but it's definitely muted and somewhat boring and ordinary, with the scenes of people talking to each other, swapping information, sitting in a room. And that happens mainly in the first act. But Sputnik always makes up for this and ups its game in style and atmosphere for its set pieces. The opening scene, all of the stuff with the alien, and some really cool bits that happen later on in the film, which I'm definitely not going to be spoiling. One thing that does feel borrowed or heavily influenced by mainstream cinema is the score. Everybody's doing this blast of noise thing in favour of traditional melody. I don't mean songs, but there seems to be more of a wall of sound thing going on, especially in big science fiction. It's not a bad thing. That's not such a criticism, because I think it really works here. In fact, everything comes together to form this really tight, controlled experience. We're on a restricted base. The decor is very functional. All the characters are focused on a mission. It's quite claustrophobic in scope, which makes that curveball of a fucking alien living inside a man's ass all the more impactful. It's blood and chaos and emotions in a world of grey communism. That is definitely a deliberate theme in the writing. The idea of entities being linked and feeding off each other. I wonder how different this film would have been if it was Americanized. Actually, now that I come to think of it, the most obvious comparison of an American version of this is Alien. Although Tatiana is a very strong woman in Sputnik, Ripley is painted as an independent person that beats the monster. Spoiler. Tatiana is part of a bigger process, the government, and she is held back by that system. I don't know if the whole thing is supposed to be a giant metaphor for communism, but it is about a life being supported by another and the government deciding ultimately what is right for them. And it's set in 1984. It would have been much easier to set this in contemporary times. As a viewing experience, as a slice of entertainment, other than the opening 2 or 3 minutes, I think we have to get over the hump of the first act, which does drag a little bit. It's ever so slightly boring. But once we get over that, the film just takes off and gets better and better. And I really enjoyed myself. And it is split right down the middle of science fiction and horror, and it never goes too deep into either genre. And the whole Russian thing is a very welcome texture. Like all good films, I'm still thinking about it a couple of weeks after watching it, which is always a good sign. It's not just a monster popcorn movie with subtitles. It's a good film. A score for Sputnik. I'm feeling a nice big fat 80%. That would have been a bit higher if that first act would have been whipped up a bit more. If you have seen Sputnik, did you love it? Did you hate it? Or are you a bit meh and hanging around here in the middle somewhere? Let us know in the comments, please.
You don't wanna see my dark side. Your favourite MCs in my archives. Yeah, my hard drive. Yeah, better ask right. Love me or hate me. Yeah, like Marmite. And you deep left, yeah, you far right. Couldn't care less. As long as the vibes right. Loose in the soul, but the energy's so tight. Mad like Heath Ledger, yeah, in the dark night. Active, yeah, that's my gang. Destructive, yeah, yeah.